Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Late Show. This is your host, Young Brando, to talk horology with you after dark. We're settling in. We have a lot of interesting new releases to talk about, something that we didn't do yesterday. So it's about time that we catch up with some news. There are a lot of interesting pieces that were released by Grand Seiko, Tissot, uh, Yema, Glashütte Original, uh, as well as Fortis, which is not a brand that I talk about on this channel all that much, but they have an interesting watch that we can take a look at. So there's no there's never any reason to avoid uh, them. So let's start with Tissot, which has been checking all the right boxes, as you know, as a brand, expanding their variety of offerings that appeal to different tastes. Of course, everyone is a fan of the PRX, which is not necessarily my preference, but they have so much more going on with the Ciderol, for example, that Basil's just shared with us. If you check the most recent episode, he got the version with the yellow band. This is the barrel-shaped case forged out of carbon fiber. Very interesting watch. I do urge you to check out, but the pieces that we'll discuss today are the three additions to their heritage collection, three chronometers that heavily appeal to vintage design, to lovers of vintage design, and also just anyone who might be looking for a simple, elegant dress watch that also offers chronometric precision at this price point. Let's start with the simplest version. This is the Tissot Heritage 1938. It has that aesthetic again of a very vintage inspired field slash trench watch, but much more simplified to perhaps have a slightly broadened appeal, not simply something that can be worn, as a sports watch, but for any occasion as a daily driver for everyday wear. The proportions of the watch are relatively normal, all things considered, because it is a 39 millimeter in diameter and 11.1 millimeter high. Inside the watch beats the ETA 2824-2, which is in this case chronometer regulated, cost certified, so to speak, or rather to refer to the specific certification. The three-hander version has, again, that classic, ubiquitous, ever-present 2824-2 that is regulated to chronometric precision, cost certified. And in this case, it has a very nice combination of a slightly textured black dial with cutout Arabic numerals, again, ever so slightly oversized, with a railroad track for the minutes and seconds, an onion crown, knurled for a better grip, and there is an actually a chronometer writing on the dial, which I think for the most part really balances the oversized Heritage Tissot logo more than anything else. The watch is surprisingly well priced. Perhaps it shouldn't be so surprising because that happens to be Tissot's forte. On a leather strap, the standard grained calfskin leather, it is $825. There are a few different options if you want to kind of accessorize, different colors of straps. I think they're all calfskin but differently patterned. But I feel the standard dark brown grained calfskin leather somehow fits the vibe of the watch more than anything at any rate. Again, this is 11.1 millimeters high, 11.1 millimeters in thickness, with power reserve of 38 hours. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of the Powermatic 80. This is not the Powermatic 80 movement, although it essentially has the same architecture since it is the ETA 2824-2. If the Powermatic involves the modification of that movement base to a reduced frequency, so you can get longer power reserve out of it. In this case, what's involved is better regulation at the standard 4 hertz frequency, 28,800 semi-oscillations per hour. So you have actually a piece that is COS certified. Which pardon me. Which is, of course, like a 10-second interval per day, -4 +6, if I'm not mistaken. Of the same version, the three-hander, they also have a salmon dial execution, which is combined with an kind of a like smoke gray grained calfskin leather strap, which I think is a very handsome watch. Again, I'm kind of a stickler, for font and proportion. So there's something that doesn't quite sit right with me in this watch. I feel like the chronometer writing is just way too large and considering all of that, including the size of the Arabic numerals, the sword hands seem too delicate for my taste, but those are, again, minor quibbles which concern a watch that otherwise provide incredible value. If you want a simple three-hander that is actually well regulated, of course, with a generic movement, you can hardly do much better. This is the Tissot Heritage 1938 with the ETA 2824-2, cost certified, 39 millimeters in diameter, executed in stainless steel, and a notch slightly over 11 millimeters in thickness. The pricing is $825 at retail. I'm sure with some patience and a little bit of a side quest, you should be able to get it significantly cheaper in a couple of months' time. Or perhaps if you have good relations with your local jeweler who also happens to be a Tissot dealer, in which case you should certainly see them, bring a box of donuts, ask how they are, and also ask for a discount. Oh, hey guys, nice to see you all. Let me see. Let's attend to the chat a little bit. There's there's a small seconds version of this watch as well that I want to highlight. But before that, or rather right after I pull up a picture of that, I will get to the chat. Let's see. Andrew, how are you doing, man? Van Lux, nice to see you. Thomas Broadband says, has there always been a T on the crown? I don't know. Look, I mean, from the vintage era, a lot of crowns are unsigned, as you know. So if you're asking in that kind of scale, in that kind of range, I can't really point the transition, but a lot of modern Tissot watches have signed crowns for sure. Van Lux makes fun of how I pronounce Salman. Salman, maybe, like the Arabic name. Sam Davidson. Yeah, Salmon dials have really been pressing my button lately. Sam, it's been my joke that salmon is the new black. I'm a huge fan of salmon dials, copper dials, dials that are actually fashioned from pink gold. I'm a huge fan, but they are certainly trendy. It's almost every single brand gives one of their watches those dials. And of course, you can scale back, or you can rather turn the time tide back a little bit, rewind the time, and maybe look at a few points of origin for this trend. I am actually compiling an episode on all the watches from Eric Clapton's collection that have been sold in a public auction. And that's certainly one of the themes that's been emerging, right? You know, it's really through a certain obsession with that particular combination of white metal case and salmon dial in Eric Clapton's 3970 that seems to be a certain point of origin or point of departure for the craze for salmon dial. Of course, there have been other sorts of classic combinations in vintage Rolex and Patek. Pink on pink is always a winning combination, you know, pink gold case with a pink dial of some sort. But the modern trend skews more towards having salmon or copper tone dials with white metal cases, be it stainless steel or white gold. I hope pressing your button in a good way. By the way, Thomas Broadband says try a gray suede strap. That's a great option as well. Or Alcantara would be my choice, since it has all the desirable properties of suede, without the cruelty. Sorry, I don't want to, I don't want to step on a soapbox. But also, Alcantara has that luxury association immediately as well, as much as suede, perhaps, since it is used in the interiors of some of the most desirable supercars of our day. So I think this could be a great piece on a gray suede or great Alcantara strap for sure. Great idea. Good thinking as always, Thomas. Bobby Bag of Donuts. All right. Interesting. Cool watch. Yeah, I like this new Tissot Heritage pieces that have just emerged. Great deal. Great vintage look. JJ's watch hangout, Andrew L says, live just ended. Anthony Ferrer came into the chat. I don't know. I just came home, so I know it was about him, about Timepiece Gentleman. So Andrew L went into a jeweler's yesterday with all the lights and watches. They looked very shiny and cheap. Okay. Listen, I mean, jeweler, authorized dealer, whatever it is, for the most part, 90% of stores that sell watches don't necessarily have the ideal lighting for the best appreciation of a luxury watch. It's just, it has something to do with, I guess, practices of commercial real estate and how one designs and lights a luxury point of retail. It makes a huge difference when you have boutiques, when you have showrooms that take in a lot of natural light. The absolute best example of this, if you ever make your way to Southern California, you owe it to yourself to come to the F. Bejon boutique on Sunset. I mean, it's one of the best designed horological spaces, bar none. Lives up to the name of Sunset, lives up to everything that the brand promises. For sure, you have to try it. Big Meat says it's fucking pink. It really is, and it is Barbie season. Big Meat, we should all get pink watches. Andrew L says they had Omega, Hamilton, Tissot, Longines. Sounds like a Swatch Group store. It was in a shopping mall. That's exactly what I mean, right? You know, no offense, there are a lot of great watch boutiques in shopping malls, old school shopping malls, or sometimes they're open air malls that provide otherwise a great shopping experience, but the lighting for luxury watches, it's just not ideal. But that's okay. You'll learn to live with it. You'll learn to find other ways of understanding, appreciating, and experiencing watches. But you need sunlight for sure. Well, if you ever come near here, please do visit the Jean Boutique. And Van Luck says, "Come on, Barbie, pizza party." It's amazing. I kind of miss pizza. Anyway, so this is the small seconds version. It has a different movement with actually a more extended power reserve at 42 hours. This particular watch, the small seconds variant of the Heritage, has an ETA 2895-2, which is a variant of ETA 2892, and it is relatively thin. As you can see here, it's still a self-winding movement, an automatic movement with a full rotor, but it's one of the thinnest ETA movements of this kind. So this particular piece has a couple of different things that it has over on the three-hander version of the 1938, which according to your taste can be better or worse. You'll be the judge of it. Right under 10 millimeters in thickness, thanks to the thinner movements, the 2895-2. It has a date window at 3 o'clock. And it also has a 42-hour power reserve rather than the 38, and comes in an old school Milanese or mesh style bracelets, which adds perhaps an extra bit of sizzle to this aged steak. And there's a little bit more contrast on the dial as well, which is kind of like a charcoal gray, not necessarily pitch black. And I think that has mostly to do with the grenet texture, with the textured surface of the dial. The Arabic numerals are also in a cream tone, and I believe they're also in I want to say they're in a slightly different font, but I don't think that's true. I don't want to mislead you. I think it's just the application that makes it look slightly different. The date window at 3 o'clock is framed with that same cream detail. And there is like a radial guilloche, kind of a circular grooving for the small seconds subdial, which is a nice silvered white accent that also greets you with the railroad track for the minutes on the periphery of the dial. Once again, you have a nicely sized onion style crown, knurled for better grip. And the watch is actually presented on a mesh bracelet, which adds a little bit, a little bit of additional value there. There's a little bit more contrast visually in this piece, which I'm sure would look great on a gray strap as well, just as we were talking about the three-hander versions. It does, in fact, come with an extra gray leather strap. Once again, this is a thinner piece at 9.8 millimeters compared to the 11.1 of the three-hander version. It has a little bit more of a visual interest, a little bit more of a contrast, not only on its style, but also thanks to the mesh bracelet on which it's presented. It also has a date function at 3 o'clock, so quite a bit of a different aesthetic there. I kind of like the fact that you have a nice subdial for seconds at 6 o'clock rather than like an enlarged chronometer writing. They should be justifiably proud of providing this kind of value right at or around $1,000. So I'm not necessarily against writing that on the dial, but I find it a little bit too overbearing on these versions. It's a little large for my liking. Z-Man, thank you so much for becoming a member of the channel. And Vanlux, I respect your opinion. It's certainly a very different vibe, right? These sorts of dress pieces on distinct vintage style bracelets, it's a different vibe because we have this mental block a lot of times, right? That we associate dress watches with leather straps, sports watches with full matching bracelets. So it's a little bit of a cognitive disjunction when, as a contemporary watch collector and enthusiast, when you see sports watches on leather straps and dress watches on matching metal straps. So I understand. For me, I think it's a breath of fresh air to see sometimes these kinds of uniquely styled watches, whether they come from the dress category and disrupt a little bit of our contemporary common sense, or they come from a more dressy territory but experiment a little bit with straps to bring something else out of the watch. I mean, since we were looking at a watch that has that field watch inspired aesthetic, this is a recent favorite of mine. I really love, for example, what they did here with these two different straps that they're including in the whole package. You know, again, I can nitpick and say, like, I wish the textured, the canvas strap were a little darker or something. But the fact remains, you know, sometimes it's cool to see what is traditionally or more commonly a sporty watch, right? A tool watch, after all. That's the origins of a trench watch or a field watch, and see it on a strap that is well chosen for it, that brings something else out of it. And in the same way, I'm quite happy that the small seconds version of the Tissot Heritage 1938 has this mesh bracelet option that really brings something different out of that watch. And as Z-Man says, bracelet is easier to clean, and honestly, in certain climates, it also doesn't stick to you. So, you know, it's important. It's important. I understand that concern, even though I love wearing sports watches, especially Rolex sports watches with leather straps. The Whiskey Reaper is here. I see you, Whiskey Reaper. I see you. And again, thank you, Z-Man, for becoming a member. And Frank and Honest, thank you for reminding everyone to upvote. Thomas says the mesh bracelet belongs to a different time period, most certainly. It's not 1938 style, really. I like those 60s style metal bracelets with the holes, and the expandable metal bracelets too. The expandable bracelets are an acquired taste, and I don't know whether I have acquired that taste, at least not yet. And I actually don't like a lot of the 60s and 70s style bracelets that remain of that time, right? When you think of the, you know, when you think of the Jubilee and Oyster, for example, those bracelets are even earlier, right? You know, Oyster is first half of the 20th century. Jubilee is 1945, right? Post-war, mid-century, let's say, if we push it just a little bit. But you know, we consider them timeless now. Whereas when I think of expandable bracelets, ladder bracelets, even mesh bracelets to a certain extent, I think they carry a certain baggage. You know, they have that sort of vintage effect, and that's why I think it makes sense to mix and match here, even though the watch calls itself 1938 and has that, you know, interwar field watch aesthetic. And the mesh bracelet, again, I think Thomas is right. If memory serves as well, is from a later period of design. I think they still work very nice together. They could, you know, you could match this with like a beads of rice style bracelet from a place like Forstner, you know, which kind of harkens back to a lot of the classic bracelet styles, including, you know, oyster style with rivets and a straight end link, the bon clip, which was used in combination with watches worn by astronauts. They even have a ladder style. You know, I detest it, but it's there. And they have that beautiful 7-row beads of rice, which has a little bit of a contrast as well. And just so you guys know, Forstner always has a Black Friday sale, which I think gives you a 15% discount. So I would most certainly wait for that. But these are really great pieces, great styles of bracelets to combine with vintage or vintage styled timepieces. I actually just got beads of rice bracelet from them to put my Merci Alessandro, the Archie watch, on it. But I'm so happy with it on a leather strap that I don't know. I'm still thinking. But yeah, I love this watch, and I look forward to putting it on that beads of rice bracelet at a certain point. Yes. Okay. So I like these watches. I mean, this piece, since it comes with both the mesh bracelet and the leather strap, is a little more expensive, but it's still right around $1,000, $1,050 specifically. That's the pricing for the Tissot Heritage Small Seconds 1938, which comes with this package, a case that is more svelte, a piece that looks a little more interesting visually, but the three handers look just great too. If you want that muted aesthetic of a classic watch for everyday wear on a leather strap. Gefrère is yeah. I mean, you can make an entire show out of it for sure, because they made the original Oyster, they made the original Jubilee, they made the original Royal Oak, they made the original Nautilus, they made the original 222, they made the beads of rice bracelets um, for Hoya chronographs. They made bracelets for Universal Genève watches. It's a whole universe, honestly. And Van Luck says that watch would look good with rubber strap. I don't know if he means it seriously or not. But anyway, so I like this as well. And the Heritage three-hander is actually turns out significantly cheaper at $825 in US dollars. The three-hander, again, is a little thicker. Both watches are 39 millimeter in diameter, but the three-hander is 11.1, whereas the small seconds has a thinner case profile at 9.8 millimeters. Let's take a look at Grand Seiko's Katana US exclusives. Since I find Grand Seiko's and Seiko's web pages in general to be extremely difficult to navigate, I'm going to depend on Mark Kauslaric's article on Hodinky. Let me see, maybe I can find something on Grand Seiko's. Okay. All right. They are there. They're there on the first page. So let's see. Let's start with the SPGA 493, because apparently this is the US limited edition inspired by the forging of a katana blade. It kind of looks like the Eye of Mordor too. Has one of those textured dials, which made Grand Seiko quite popular. It's a spring drive movement watch. It's a watch that is powered by a spring drive movement and has the power reserve also at 7 o'clock with a yellow accent, which not only combines beautifully with uh, the red tones of the textured dial, but also, of course, harkens to the glimmer of the fire in which such blades are forged. It is one of 600 pieces from the Heritage Collection, SPGA, with the red dial, priced at $6,000. I love the Grand Seiko copy, so I want to read it for you. The Japanese sword known as the katana is a world-renowned masterpiece in steel. Crafted through a distinctive and sophisticated process, the katana has created fascination and allure the world over, derived from nature and brought together through expert craftsmanship. The katana is made from earth, fire, water, and air. Iron sand is drawn from the earth, then heated in a furnace known as a tatara. The melted sand forms the Japanese steel known as the tamayahane. From this Japanese steel, two variations can be found. The first is the high carbon steel used for the outer sharp edge, or kawagane, and the second is the strong inner core of the blade, or shingane. Grand Seiko honors the katana and the forging of those steels with the US exclusive limited edition SPGA 493. It turns out, guys, with all the complaining that people have about Zaratsu polishing, that must have been quite a successful marketing shtick for Grand Seiko in the US, that they are really leaning on it in these special editions. I believe there are 500 a piece in each dial color. There are two more dial colors, so I'm going to go through them momentarily. They're all powered by the spring drive caliber 9R65, which has an approximately 3 days of power reserve and an accuracy of plus minus 15 seconds per month, which basically equals plus minus 1 second per day. Of course, the spring drive is essentially a hybrid movement that combines quartz and mechanical, and it basically blends the accuracy of quartz driven movements with that beautiful smooth sweep of a contemporary mechanical movement. And in fact, it's one of the smoothest sweeps that you can see of a second's hand, for sure. The piece abides by all those proportions of a modern dress watch by Grand Seiko, 40 millimeters in diameter, lug to lug 46.2, so quite wearable, 12.5 millimeters in thickness, and the 19 millimeter lug width. Again, I think it's It's a watch that has very nice proportions. If you wanted to add a spring drive operated piece to the collection, one of these might be an interesting point of entry to the Grand Seiko range. The bracelets, again, in terms of design, most certainly, and according to the experience of, excuse me, at least some collectors, also in terms of wearability, leave something to be desired, unfortunately. Um, I cherish Seiko as great designers usually, so I hope eventually that will be reflected in the bracelets they design for Grand Seiko pieces, but we are not there just yet. So this was the SPGA 493 that harkens to the aesthetics of the furnaces in which katana blades are forged. It's one of 500 pieces and is priced at retail right at 6,000 US dollars. Next up, we are looking at the SPGA 491G, which has a lustrous, verdant green dial. This piece that belongs to the Heritage Collection is a US exclusive, but I'm given to understand it's not actually limited, unlike the red. And in this case, just like the story that we were just talking about, it refers to the one of the four elements, earth in this case. If the limited edition of 500 pieces was fire, this is earth, inspired by the katana USA special edition of the SPGA 491. I believe it's not limited, and it's priced for a little less than the SPGA 493 that we were just looking at $5,600, whereas the red, the fire red, was in fact one of 500 pieces. There's also a black dial model, which is, let me see if we can find it here. Right here, which is also not limited. Kind of a black dial, which has like a sandpaper-like texture if you look closer to it. Maybe kind of a gilt dial feel as well. Again, the same specs as the other two models, SBGA 489 is also a US exclusive, also inspired by the katana. Not a limited edition. Same 9 R65 movement with the 3-day power reserve and a precision of plus minus 1 second per day, which is about 15 seconds plus or minus per month, which is much superior to chronometric accuracy. Of course, what you have here is a hybrid movement that is a combination of quartz and mechanical rather than mechanical, pure and simple, like the chronometers we were just looking at by Tissot in their Heritage line 1938. Again, just to sum up, and this is my pick of the litter. I really like this Eye of Sauron kind of look. It's not often that you find an interesting red dial, even different shades of it, like a nice burgundy or oxblood, like Thomas was saying. Even simple lacquered dials like that are quite hard to find. But to find something like this that is so finely textured in a reasonably limited edition, right? Maybe it's not 200 or 250, but it's also not 2,000 different examples. So still relatively exclusive. If you're a fan of Grand Seiko, if you're a collector of Grand Seiko, and if you are passionate about spring drive, this limited edition inspired by the katana with a striking fire red dial with very interesting texture and pattern, like an iris like pattern, could serve you well. I actually like how the yellow accents really intone that flame inspired theme. And I agree, the seconds track is great here with those gold accents, but the black dial is actually, to me at least, a lot more interesting than the green, because it really has both an interesting texture, which has that utilitarian visual feel of sandpaper, but also kind of a vibe of an old school gilt dial. Of course, old school gilt dials were lacquered dials, very very glossy. Um, so it's hard to compare really, but I like those gilt accents on this particular dial, and this is of course about $400 cheaper compared to the fire red at 5,600. So these were the three Seiko US exclusives from their Heritage collection in stainless steel, 40 millimeters in diameter, 12.5 millimeters in thickness, powered by their spring drive movement, 9R65, priced at 5,600 for the SPGA 489 and SPGA 491, and 6,000 for the fire red SPGA 493, which is limited to 500 units. Should be available almost immediately for the black and green, and the fire red is expected to be available in September exclusively at Grand Seiko boutiques, Grand Seiko online boutique, their e-commerce arm in the US, of course, only, and authorized dealers of Grand Seiko in the US. Speaking of precise pieces and chronometers, here's another one. This is a new offering by Glashütte Original, which is really a stunning watch. There's a lot that I adore about this particular piece. This is a Senator chronometer, which has a very distinct Glashütte design with a textured dial, a set of spade hands, applied Roman numerals, an oversized subsidiary dial for seconds with its own railroad track, and an up and down style power reserve indicator at 12 o'clock, which balances that subdial for seconds, and an oversized date, what Glashütte Original calls panorama date at 3 o'clock, which they balance with the signature of the brand at 9 o'clock. As you can see, the silver textured dial, or rather the textured dial with the silver tones, I think coordinates beautifully with the white gold case, which is 42 millimeters in diameter, but not excessively big thanks to its stubby lugs. And then you have the heat blued hands, which coordinates beautifully with both the applied numerals as well as the medium scale alligator strap that is executed in blue with matching stitching. I think this is a fantastic looking watch. Again, we're talking about a chronometer, which has its certification from a German institution, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see and make sure. Where they are getting the hands again are heat blued. The applied Roman numerals, however, are actually painted in blue, but they are crafted from solid gold. The two subdials are recessed, and I think in their juxtaposition, they harken back to the marine chronometers that were once produced in Glashütte. There is a script for chronometer on the dial, which, as you can see, is wrapped right around under the power reserve indicator, or rather its recessed subdial. And within that oversized subsidiary dial for the seconds, you can see the mark of provenance, which says Glashütte in Sachsen, that famous watchmaking city that is in the environs of Dresden. The dial has a frosted texture. Speaking of iconic German cities, it is actually made in Pforzheim, which is basically on the other end of the country. Not that Germany is that vast of a territory, but Pforzheim used to be basically the traditional watchmaking center and the traditional town for jewelry arts in Western Germany, whereas Glashütte / Dresden was such a center, especially for watchmaking in East Germany. And I think the reunification was a boon for both of those cities. Again, the dial has a shimmering texture in addition to that frosted finish. Because apparently that is the result of silver plating by friction applied to what is a brass blank, and then a mixture of silver powder, salt, and water is rubbed on the dial with a brush, apparently, to produce that texture and the initial color. And that color is finally settled in a galvanic bath of gray. As you see, all the scripts and writing on the dial is in blue to match, and the background of that oversized date is also in blue, with the date written in white. We have a spade set of hands again with that elegantly twisted and elongated minute hand, which indicates the minutes along a railroad style track on the periphery of the dial. They did, Thomas. The 2020 version of their chronometer was a porcelain dial with, I want to say, with painted Roman numerals, if I'm not mistaken. It was an amazing watch. You know, from a bygone time, Glashütte Original has a lot of beautiful dress watches that have Meissen porcelain dials. Meissen being the German town that is most famous for porcelain work historically. And the beautiful thing is they also have that signature of cross swords for Meissen porcelain, which gives the watch just, my God, one of the most stunning dial signatures ever. Let me find an example so you know what I mean. Okay, I found two actually. So here is a yellow gold Senator in a smaller yellow gold case, 40 millimeter, with a porcelain dial, black enamel painted numerals, a set of heat blued stainless steel spade styled hands, cross swords, and unique number for the Meissen provenance of the porcelain dial, and those are hand painted too. And as you can see, I believe actually when I think about it now, I think everything on that dial for these Meissen porcelain dials is hand painted, including the signature of the brand. I mean, if you see, it has that look of handwritten imperfection for sure. I haven't found it now, but there's a white gold or even platinum limited edition, I believe, from before that has the Roman numerals on the dial, but here's one with the Arabic numerals with heat blued stainless steel alpha styled hands, stylized Arabic numerals with crossed swords of Meissen at 6 o'clock. Again, hand painted, hand numbered. You just need to look for Senator chronometer or Senator Meissen. You know, just search the usual suspects for Glashütte, Senator Meissen, and you would be all set. But yeah, without distracting too much from what we were looking at, this is the most recent iteration of the Senator chronometer, by Glashütte Original, which is the Swatch Group owned representative of the traditional German watchmaking city. You can see it does have a beautiful hand wound caliber with a 3/4 plate, engraved balance cock with a swan neck regulator, a ratchet wheel that has the snailed finish, and apparently the caliber 5808 is certified by the Thuringian Office of Weights and Measures, where they go a 15-day chronometric trial, being examined in 5 positions and 3 different temperatures. The movement has reset to 0 stop seconds, kind of living up to its chronometric designation, which means when you pull the crown, wherever the seconds is, it actually returns to 0 automatically. So you can set the time with ease and accuracy and coordinate it with a reference time down to the very seconds. There's also a minutes détente system, which jumps the minute hands to the correct position with a nice click as well. Again, the watch is 42 millimeters in diameter, but should wear nicely on most wrists. Probably not mine. For me, it will be too big. But it has, as you can see, rather stubby lugs. A very nice kind of hobnail finish around the band of the bezel. A beautifully detailed and finished white gold case that also stands at 11.4 millimeters in thickness. I think this is a very handsome watch. It's a very good looking watch. It's a little maybe sportier, more contemporary, and a little more youthful than earlier versions of Glashütte's Senator chronometer, whether it is the 2020 version or the earlier pieces with the Meissen porcelain dials that we were looking at. Let me pull the 2020 version too, so you can have a sense of what I was talking about. Here's that piece from 2020. Again, earlier versions have so many variations with the Meissen porcelain dials. I'm a huge fan. Um, as Thomas is mentioning in chats, they even have very beautiful paintings in the Chinese style of dragons and different various depictions of scenes, um, kind of intoning the origins of porcelain as a material. Um, but coming back to the Senator chronometer of our day, 2023, um, we have again a price point that's a little salty. It is a beautiful watch. It it is, I think, a very handsome piece that checks a lot of boxes horologically as well. But I'm assuming, well, let me put it this way: 99% of collectors whom I know would have a hard time splurging more than $30,000, almost $35,000 when all things are said and done on Glashütte Original um, time and date piece. That being said, again, as always, I point you to alternatives. You can just write Senator Meissen on your Chrono 24 and look at this Ming Dragon edition, for example. You have a platinum case with a fluted bezel. Hello, Rolex, who just brought the whole finishing technique to the fold last year. $40 millimeters. Again, a beautiful hand finished, hand wound caliber. Limited piece with, I believe, an onyx cabochon on the crown, but I might be mistaken. Beautiful Glashütte ribbing on the 3/4 plates, as you can see. Platinum case with a matching tang buckle. $40 millimeters. And with just stunningly executed porcelain dials, some of which are pure, simplistic, and beautiful, others intricate, complex, and aesthetically striking, such as this Ming dragon that we have in this platinum Glashütte Senator chronometer with a Meissen porcelain dial, which you can have roughly at 50% of what you would pay for today's Senator Meissen chronometer. It's really incredible. I mean, um, if that's too much, and I can understand that, you can just go for something like the yellow gold we were just showing. Let me see. Yep. Again, 40 millimeters, beautiful white porcelain dial. It's really like a bone color, of course, not a pure white, with the Meissen signature of the cross swords at 6 o'clock. Unique number, also hand inscribed. The beautifully elongated Roman numerals, hand painted in black enamel, and a set of heat blued stainless steel hands in the spade style with a beautifully twisted minute hand as well. Amazing stuff. This particular edition happens to have perhaps a relatively quote unquote inferior caliber, but it's still quite nice. But the price point reflects that. Again, we were looking at something that was at 13,545. Um, let me see. I know this white gold also has the hand wound caliber with the 3/4 plates, made for Manfredi Jewelers, which I believe are in Connecticut. One of 20 pieces. With a matching folding clasp, deployant clasp. And again, a finely fluted bezel, a porcelain dial with stylized Arabic numerals, the cross swords of Meissen at 6, individually numbered, and alpha hands fashioned out of stainless steel and heat treated. Beautiful piece. Again, these are great value compared to the newly released version of the Chronometer 2023. Um, let's see how the 2020 version fared on the secondary markets. I think it was this. Yeah. Oh no, this is an earlier version, in fact. Right. If you like the style, but you're looking for something simpler, you can get quite a good deal with an earlier Senator chronometer as well. Again, this is today's version, which is at 32,300 in US dollars. I want to take a short break and grab a cup of water. I want to leave you with Yema's Submarine, which is their modern dive watch. Yema, as you know, is a French brand that mostly has pieces that have a vintage inspiration, even if they may not have been one-to-one recreations of the brand's archival designs. So the Submarine collection holds a relatively unique position within the catalog of the brand, since it is actually designed from scratch. It's supposed to be contemporary. Um, it is a collaboration also with pro diver and brand ambassador Jason Washington. So we'll take a look at those. I'll be right back. Just let me grab some water, freshen up, and I'll be with you shortly. All right, I am back, and we are talking about some interesting new releases. We mostly focused on chronometers so far. We looked at Tissot's affordable pieces, the Heritage 1938 collection, with options of a three-hander, one with a salmon dial and the other with a black dial, gilt accents, a small seconds version. Then we took a look at Glashütte Original, most recently with their Senator chronometer, which is a very handsome, youthful, and contemporary dress watch in white gold, but with a rather salty price tag. And before that, we looked at three different US exclusives by Grand Seiko that belong to their heritage collection, with the spring drive technology. The 9R65 movement. Interesting dial options with the limited edition of 500 pieces in fire red with that iris, Eye of Sauron kind of texture that I really appreciate. The black dial is my next favorite, with a gritty sandpaper-like texture and details that harken back to older gilt dials, of course, those being glossy lacquered numbers, and also a green dial option. The pricing being more at a mid level in this case, 5,600 for the US exclusive but not limited editions, and 6,000 for the 500-piece limited run with the furnace or fire red option. And now we are talking about contemporary dive watches by Yema with their Submarine collection. Very inventive, which just means submarine in a way. 300 millimeters of a depth rating. 30 atmos is the water resistance. They have Yema's own Yema 2000 movements. And this is the black dial option, which is presented on a rubber strap. The case is very angular and has a rather multifaceted modern design. Of course, there's a rotational bezel for dive timing. .5 millimeters in diameter. And a dial design that looks like crosshairs, really, with the center of the dial that is marked out in white against the backdrop of a black sunburst dial marked for 12 hours. And with doorstop style indices at quarters. This is a time-only piece. The dial is not interrupted by a date window, and it looks extremely legible, which is what I appreciate. The minutes and seconds are actually indicated on the rejo, which is like a silvered track. The bezel is again for 60 minutes, a dive timing bezel with 120 clicks, solid case back, which carries the crest of the French brand and is signed Morteau, which is a French city near the Swiss border, very famous for their horological high school, their watchmaking high school. And here is the luminous signature of the piece. Red-tipped center sweep seconds hand, the hour and minutes hands, pencil styled, are also luminous, and so is the bezel. That bezel, by the way, has a slightly vintage feel, so to speak, since it is an aluminum insert. But the Arabic numerals and the hash marks here, including the pointer triangle, are luminous, so they have an interesting aesthetic. The watch again is 40.5 millimeters in diameter and 12 millimeters in thickness. Sam Davidson says £2 sterling. Thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate you. This kind of reminds me of Vostok amphibian. And Thomas says it reminds me of a JLC kind of look. Well, I mean, those are all good things. You know, honestly, I think the fact that it looks so inspired by some iconic divers, including the Vostok amphibian and the JLC Polaris. I think that's not so bad. I don't necessarily see the resemblance with the JLC Polaris so much. Not even that much with Vostok amphibian either, Sam. But again, you know, the fact that that it's familiar, even though it is certainly its own thing, can't be so bad. But this is, for example, Vostok amphibian that I believe Sam believes looks a little bit like the Yema Submarine we were just looking at. I mean, I can roughly see it, but not exactly. Not exactly. There are a few different dial colors and accents, and I also want to show that, for example, this is the moss green with the matching rubber strap. The green accents are on the dial, the aluminum bezel insert, and the rubber strap, but the watch can also be matched with a rice grain style bracelet, which I like quite a bit, but it looks great in either case. By the way, the pieces are 890 euros on the rubber strap and 990 on the grains of rice style strap. The pre-order will open in a little more than 5 days on August 24 at 4 p.m. European time, of course. And they're supposed to deliver at the end of September. Yema 2000 has an accuracy of plus and minus 10 seconds per day and a power reserve of 42 hours. Again, 890 on rubber, 990 on the bracelets. And in 5 variants, we were just looking at the black. This is the moss green, which carries those accents not only to the bezel insert, but also to the matching rubber strap. There's also a navy blue version. Again, with the matching rubber strap. Of course, the rice grain styled bracelet option as well. And there are 2 further options in green, in yellow and orange. The yellow one still has a black dial, but the aluminum insert kind of has that darker shade of yellow. Like an, I don't know, like an ochre shade, perhaps, or maybe amber, and a yellow rubber strap. The luminous signature remains the same on all the watches, and the orange similarly has those colorful accents on the rubber band as well as the aluminum insert. Thomas says, if JLC moderned up, it would look like Yema. Perhaps, why not? I do like Yema's designs, whether they are contemporary or more vintage oriented. Honestly, I'm not too hot on the orange or yellow in this series. The blue seems too predictable, but I think the moss green and the classic black seem like absolute winners. If you want something different, the green is amazing. If you want something classic and ultra legible, of course, you have the classic black. Again, the watch has a rather angular, modern design with a solid case back, 40.5 millimeters in diameter, so not extremely big, but just right. 12 millimeters thick, and runs on the workhorse caliber Yema 2000, which has a power reserve of 42 hours and an accuracy of plus minus 10 seconds per day. Again, on the rubber strap, 890, and the rice grain styled matching stainless steel strap, it's 990. Very interesting offering. I I love it, actually. I love it. I'm so happy that there are so many more options than 10, 15, 20 years ago at this entry level price point. I know it can be confusing for people who are just starting out in the hobby. Um, I know it can distract you from what your goals are sometimes, because honestly, I always advocate for saving up to get that one watch you really want rather than getting a bunch of really interesting and decent pieces at an affordable level. But of course, there's not no one way to collect watches. So, um, none of everything that I said should be taken with a grain of salt, so to speak. But I think um, it's a nice world to be in, to have all these options at or around $1,000 in Yema, Zodiac, uh, Mido, Tissot, Unimatic, Baltic, Merci. It's it's a good time to be an enthusiast. It's a great time to be a collector. Now for something a little different. We are gonna go to a limited edition piece by Oleg und Weiss. This is a Zurich-based Swiss watch company. ONW maybe could be familiar to some because they were one of those brands that quote unquote, got the rights to the Navitimer design, or rather made their own versions of the Navitimer design, just like the German brand Zinn. They have recently experienced a revival. A lot of the pieces that they have made over the years since their revival have been strongly vintage inspired tool watches. But this particular piece, which is the OW56M, harkens back to 40s pilot watches, and it's made of vintage new old stock parts with certain contemporary components and a 38 millimeter upcycled case from their unused stock. This is a time only piece. Again, the aspiration is to produce a legible time only watch, a three-hander with an arrow styled sweep center seconds hand. with a mesh bracelet again, as you can see. The hour and minute hands are generously loomed triangles on the quarters and abbreviated baton markers for the rest of the indices. I've already mentioned that it is 38 millimeters, the case in diameter, and it's 11.5 millimeters thick. The piece has a screw down crown, so it has a 50-meter water resistance. The fixed bezel has 12 markers that apparently are composed of Morse code dots and dashes that spell SOS, which I don't understand. Why they would do something like that. I guess it's something cutesy and gimmicky that they wanted to integrate into the design. The loom of the watch is super luminova, but it is applied in a beige shade, which emphasizes the vintage inspiration of the watch. And it is plexi crystal, a plastic crystal that covers and protects the dial, which should again intensify the vintage vibes of this piece. The movement is the classic workhorse ETA 2824. So it is the bread and butter 4 hertz, 28,800 semi-oscillations per hour movement that has a power reserve of 38 hours. Again, stainless steel on a matching stainless steel bracelet. And the piece was priced at 1,356 Swiss francs, including shipping and all the import taxes, and offered in a limited 56-piece run, again to celebrate their founding year, 1956. I believe this piece is already sold out, but if you are really interested in it, I suppose it might be worth reaching out to see if they have any more remaining, or perhaps someone already backed out. Who knows? It looks like an interesting watch if you are into that 40s Fliege styling piece. Yeah. Thomas says the Oleg und Weiss or ONW is sold out. SOL, of course, it means something else as well. Can't buy one. You're right, but it might be worth reaching out if you are genuinely interested. You never know things that can happen once you establish a normal human connection with people. Speaking of Parmigiani, apparently monochrome watches received an example of the new Tonda PF flying tourbillon in platinum on an integrated bracelet and with a Milano blue dial. It's really a stunning watch. Flying tourbillon is always exciting to observe because your view of that dynamic and almost organic mechanism of the watch is completely uninterrupted, right? A flying tourbillon means a tourbillon that does not have a bridge, which is harder to execute and again, aesthetically more pleasing. And of course, this is an absolutely stunning version of the Tonda PF to begin with, being fully executed in platinum, including, of course, the fluted bezel as well as the integrated bracelet. This piece has a platinum case that is 42 millimeters in diameter. It is a very thin watch, only 8.6 millimeters in thickness. The piece has a screw down crown, which ensures 100 meters of water resistance. And this platinum watch actually also has a platinum dial, which is sandblasted with a matte dark blue finish, which the brand calls Milano Blue. Once again, you have the rhodium plated 18 karat gold hands, skeletonized to maximize your enjoyment of that beautiful dial. The indices, the hour markers, are also multifaceted and abbreviated for the same purpose. There's an applied medallion style logo at 12 o'clock, which serves again along the same lines, taking up minimal real estate from that stunning dark blue dial built on a platinum base. And the tourbillon cage itself is also surrounded by a rhodium plated white gold ring. Here is the micro rotor caliber, which can be seen from the case back. It has a frequency of 3 hertz and a power reserve of 48 hours, 2 days. The micro rotor matches the prominent and distinguished material of the case. It is also made out of platinum with that grain d'orge or barley corn motif of the brand engraved on it. The bridge plates of the movement are decorated with the Côte de Genève circulaire, the circular version of the Geneva waves, and those bridge plates are beveled by hand as well. The tourbillon cage is in its turn crafted from titanium. A stunningly elegant and very exclusive piece. Thin, refined, and in a very deep but subdued dial color that I think matches really well with the platinum material of the watch. Hi, JB. My eyes always look for the hiding GMT hand that shares the same look. Hey, look, I mean, I love pretty much every single thing that they make in this series. I like the reduced size with the full automatic movement, not the micro rotor. I like the micro rotor as well. Don't take me wrong. I wish they didn't have the date window on it. But for that reason, I like the rattrapante versions of it even more. And if money were no object, I would most certainly try to get a flying tourbillon or a split second chronograph from them. I think that would be amazing. But maybe in another world. This piece is priced at the eye-watering, earth-shattering 150,000 Swiss francs. One last look at that beautifully finished, ultra-thin tourbillon movement. The Parmigiani Fleurier flying tourbillon in platinum with the deep blue Milano dial, 42 millimeters in thick, 42 millimeters in diameter, and 8.5 millimeters in thickness. Yeah, don't remind me. Don't remind me. I kind of I kind of still want to get an Octofinissimo, but I've been putting it off, and I've been resisting the urge. But yeah, that is an interesting proposition. I mean, again, it's not the most distinctive design on the integrated bracelets, but the Tonda case predates this integrated, quote unquote, sports chic look. So it's I think it's entirely legitimate, and it's kind of its own thing, even if it's not as unique of a design as the Octofinissimo or even as the Alangonzone Odysseus. So still quite distinctive. I think, let me see. I think, guys, I'm a little spent today. I might just say goodbye, unless you have some questions or any requests or demands that you want to send through. I'll be with you tomorrow again at 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time on Saturday. I have some surprises for you next week, especially special episode that will focus on Eric Clapton's watch collection, at least those pieces of it that have surfaced on public auctions. There are many interesting examples, a lot of which are perhaps already covered, but not in a comprehensive fashion, to be honest. Not everything all at once. So I really look forward to that episode. I think that's going to be next Friday, in all likelihood, with the final time slot to be specified, but probably at the usual 8 p.m. Slot. So I look forward to that. I may have a special guest next week, but we will see. Maybe there's a better time to have that particular conversation, to schedule that interview, but I'm going to keep the name to myself for a little bit. I'm working on a new guest. If you guys would hit the like button on your way out, write a comment after the live broadcast ends, interact with the video in some way. I have, every other day I post a new video in the public part of the channel. Every week there are 3 exclusive focused themed curations for the members, so please take advantage of that. Everything is in a single playlist, so-called Wilf Hunter playlist, watches I like to find. And I also make a post every week, kind of detailing what kind of subjects I cover in the new videos I add to that list. Um, and I know many of you have gotten your first month of trial thanks to Ali Reza, the Scotch Box generosity. I hope you have been enjoying the content. If you have any recommendations, any suggestions, any requests as the members, please don't hesitate to send in your requests. Whiskey Reaper, for sure. We should have a conversation on whiskey and cigars. We will be smoking cigars at Steel Buffalo Motors on Sunday, so in about 2 days. And I really look forward to that. I really hope to deliver that episode for you and make it, in fact, a regular thing, make it a weekly thing. We won't be drinking there, but certainly after we have that um, under our belt, after we have that regular episode, we might be able to expand on that similar theme and take on other locations. And that's the gist of their quote unquote sponsorship, right? They are opening for me their home, their shop, which is a motorcycle shop that specializes in Indian motorcycles, the first motorcycle brand of the United States, handmade, really works of art. They also service all kinds of bikes, starting from e-bikes to Vespas, scooters, Harley Davidsons, of course, Indians, Triumph, and everything in between. They have great cigars, which we'll be smoking on Sunday. And you should absolutely feel free to join us on your end, as long as you're at least 25, 21 years old in the US. Um, and of course, they're also great people. So I look forward to the conversation, especially with Ben Maccabee, whom you know from that short video where he's talking about his Hoya Monaco. And Sam was saying about the Flying Tourbillon Tonda PF in platinum. This has got to be a really good option for people who want to have that stealth wealth look. I completely agree. Thank you so much for your super chat and for that intervention. Thank you, Z-Man, for becoming a member. Andrew, take care. I see you, Whiskey Reaper. I see you. And I look forward to seeing you on Sunday as well. All kind of conversation points and questions about bikes, cigars, and watches will be welcome. I really look forward to it. But between then and now, I'll also be seeing you in less than 24 hours tomorrow as well, for the Saturday live stream. Until then, wear and enjoy your watches. I was wearing my 16014, my classic Datejust today, all stainless steel with the white gold fluted bezel and a silver linen dial. I love it. Please hit the like button on the way out. I'll see you in the next one.